welcome to the program again. Where should we start from? The temperature, the political temperature in the country is quite high right now. We've seen massive defections from the APC, the senators, some senators, about 15 of them, and about 37 House of Rep members to other parties. What's your calibration of what's happening so far concerning the political scene? Because, you know, we've seen in other countries where political ideology is very key. But it seems in Nigeria, since 1999, we've seen back-to-back, cross-carpeting. It seems that Nigerian politicians are just there, perhaps for the money and self-interest. What are your views?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. The temperature is too high. And in the interest of Nigeria and everybody, we should all take a deep breath. Look at what has happened recently and just make sure that everybody makes decisions that are best for Nigeria. So it's good Senate is going on a recess. I think that it's good for everybody to take a really deep breath and make sure that we don't push Nigeria over the brink. This could get out of hand, and it's important that we don't go that direction. You have to balance a number of things. Many people who left PDP for the APC in 2014, 2015, did that for what they consider to be good reasons. If they decided that the reasons were now bad and they want to go back to the PDP, I think it's just as valid as a voter who voted for APC in 2015 deciding to vote for PDP this time. So I don't think we should overjudge people who have made a mistake or who think they've made a mistake and want to go back and correct their mistake. So I would take the defections in good faith. I would take it that people have changed their minds, and let's just see how we go forward. I think that we should be responsible about it. PDP is now the majority in the Senate, from what I hear. They're still the minority in the House, and they're still the minority in state governorships. So it's not over yet. There's work to be done. But everybody should act not in their interest, but in the interest of Nigeria. That's what I would caution everybody.
Are you worried about the lack of political ideology, like I said? Because it's quite disturbing that you would see that the spate of defections should be very worrisome. It worries me. Why? Because since 1999, as it were, I can't really say that this party stands for this or party B stands for that. And it has made the nation so poorly managed, poorly governed, and also poorer. Because they always say Western economies or advanced economies, societies modern. We are like the US. You will know, even the UK, you will have the left people that are centered, that is in the middle, left, right, or the center. But here, we're having more of money politics than political ideologies. Isn't it really a thing of a challenge?
Well, these things evolve. You must remember that even in the US, the Democratic Party today was the pro-slavery party. And it has evolved from being pro-slavery, very right party to the left party. So these ideologies do evolve. And while I would agree with you, and I like it to be that we're doing things based on ideology, because you can't separate the two parties, really. It will take some time. I think it will take another 20 years for these parties to develop their ideologies and stick to it. Right now, everybody's just jostling for position. And unfortunately in Nigeria, if you're not in political position, you are seen as a second-class citizen. So people who think they care about the country want to make sure they're with the winning
Should we wait that long for like 20 years before we get so mature in our politics? Because, you know, the nation right now is going the way of the politicians. They've adjourned plenary, for example, till 25th of September. As an economic analyst, I'm also worried what would happen to the economy. President Buhari had sent a request to the National Assembly that would definitely be on hold to September. President Buhari is requesting some monies for election and all of that. That will be on hold till September. So what happens?
Well, look, nobody's going to tell you that they're happy with what's going on. And the thing I would point out to most people is we need leadership. If you look at what's happening in the world, leadership is the thing I believe is lacking in Nigeria. I think that if we have an inspired leader, we can shorten this period that I said of 20 years, 5 years, 3 to 5 years. But there's a lot of work to be done. And there seems to be an absence of leadership in Nigeria today. There was an absence of leadership in Nigeria from everybody's perspective in 2015. That's why they changed the leadership. Unfortunately, unless you are not a Nigerian lover, you can't but feel concerned at the way things are going. The fight between the legislature and the executive is not healthy. The fight between the executive and the judiciary is not healthy. The notion that you want to ask for supplementary funds for the election, but you must come from the projects of the National Assembly is already setting up a conflict. And so...
Wasn't the president right to do so? Because some projects were also removed from what he had sent. And over 6,000 projects were also inserted by the lawmakers.
He signed the budget. When you sign a budget,
that means
it's a law. He is obliged by law, when he signs that budget, to go through to do what the law says. It's an appropriation bill. It's not optional. The notion that presidents have, and again, this is not just this current president, that they have a choice in how they execute an appropriation bill that they have signed is faulty. It's a law. It's the law of the land. Whatever is in that budget, as signed by the president, is law. He must obey it. So I don't see the sense it makes to sign a law and then go back and say, well, I don't like it anymore, change it. So he was always going to set up a conflict. And so that's why I say it's good to temper things down. When they come back in September, they will approve the budget for the election. It's critical. They know they will do it. But they will do it in a different way, I believe, than the environment that the president has suggested.
Okay, let's just quickly take a short break.
South Africa, with close to 56 million people, is the world's 24th most populous nation. South Africa has 3 capital cities: Cape Town, which is the legislative capital, Pretoria is the administrative capital, and Bloemfontein is the judicial capital. The rand is the currency of South Africa. Its economy, with a GDP of $349 billion as at 2018, is the second largest in Africa after Nigeria. Johannesburg Stock is the largest stock exchange in Africa. Gold and diamond accounts for the export, while imports are led by crude petroleum and gold. Cyril Ramaphosa-led administration is bent on tackling the persistent high rate of unemployment in South Africa with massive reforms and social programs. This is South Africa in 60 seconds.
The other political party now that seems to be jubilating, which is the PDP, do you think that there should be a victory dance or a sense of triumphalism on the side of the PDP? Because, you know, when I calibrated all this, what also came to my mind is, in whose interest are all these politicians doing these things? Or the interest for their pockets, as it were. Because if you take a look at Nigerians, our lives are not exactly as better as we expect. The economy is still witnessing a fragile growth. Inflation is still at double digit. Food inflation is going higher. Herdsmen, farmers' conflict is still there. Nothing is being addressed. So, but the lawmakers came up to say, oh, that we should try to defend our democracy. This is a fight against democracy. This against democracy. But nobody stood like this to say Nigerians are suffering. Herdsmen, farmers' crisis still linger. Let's do what we can do to solve the situation.
Well, look, politicians will always act in... There's always a ratio of self-interest and national interest for every politician. The tragedy in Nigeria is that the self-interest ratio seems to be higher than it should be. And we need leaders, politicians who have a higher national self-interest than personal interest. But like I said, we will get there. We won't get there in one day. But all these issues you've mentioned, first of all, I agree with you. PDP should not be jubilating. There is no cause for jubilation. If you take the reasons why people are switching, because Nigeria is not doing well, then all of us should be sad that Nigeria is not doing well. It is not a cause for jubilation that Nigeria is not doing well. PDP should, as they claim they have, learn from their mistakes in the past, learn from the mistakes of the APC, and let's hope that they put forward a candidate and candidates that have learned these lessons that will try to move Nigeria forward without focusing on self-interest. Self-interest doesn't work anymore. And I just hope that they're not jubilating, but they're doing the hard work that needs to be done.
Does it bother you right now that Nigeria is not moving as fast as it should move beyond the level of politics? You know, my show is a business and financial program, and I'm being, you know, dragged around this political because I also do know that there's a relationship between politics and economy, because the way it is right now, there are risks to the economy. The MPC met on Monday and Tuesday. Their decisions too, I didn't even look at the decisions, 14% and all of that. Well, I read between the lines of what the MPC said, which is very, very germane and very, very important. So can Nigeria move beyond the level of the politics we are practicing right now, bearing in mind that there are also risks to the economy? Those the politicians want to govern are at risk right now.
Well, let me say that my expertise is in the economy. And I've been very concerned about the Nigerian economy since 2011. And much of the criticism that I leveled at the economy when I was in government, because I had access, I could do it privately. And I did. I was very critical of many policies of the Jonathan administration, but I did it quietly. I can tell you that the Minister of Finance once threw me out of office because I was criticized.
It was Minister of Finance?
The last one.
Okonjo-Iweala?
Yes, she threw me out of office because I was...
She threw you out of our office?
Yes, because I was criticizing certain things. But I had access, so I could criticize privately. Now I don't have access, so I must criticize publicly. It's not because I'm bitter, it's because...
You see clearer? Do you see clearer?
No, it's the same criticisms I'm making. Let me give you an example that troubles me. In the last 12 months, the Nigerian naira has appreciated by 12% versus the US dollar.
Yes.
What that means is that American goods, foreign goods in general, are cheaper than Nigerian goods by 12% in the last year. How does that make sense in an economy where you're trying to encourage employment, encourage growth, encourage exports? If you want to encourage exports, employment, and growth, you don't appreciate your currency.
So should we go the way China is going, to depreciate their currency to make their exports more attractive? Well, is that what you're canvassing for?
There are three things you can do to your currency. You can keep it stable in real terms, which means you allow it to weaken according to differential in inflation. That's keeping it stable in real terms. You can appreciate it, which we're doing, which is terrible. Or you can depreciate it, which means you allow it to fall faster than the difference in interest rates. That's what I would support, because I think ultimately we must make what we eat, we must make what we drink, we must make what we wear, and we must employ our people. So I'm a growth employment person. So for that, I would weaken the currency. But there are people who will argue that we can't weaken it too quickly and we should keep it stable. But one thing we cannot do is appreciate our currency when you have a weak economy, high unemployment, and you want to promote exports. Many companies, you heard about the company that just closed shop in Nigeria. I forget what, so big company that came here and later they closed shop. Manufacturing companies cannot compete with a foreign equivalent when you're appreciating your currency. It's a wrong-headed policy, and it will lead to more job losses, more dependence on imports, and it will lead to no growth in the economy.
Now, you're canvassing for a weakening of the naira, and I want to understand. No. I'm trying to weakening of what?
I'm canvassing for either you keep it in real terms stable, which means you allow it to go down by the difference in inflation between the two currencies, or you weaken it. I'm for weakening, but
which I said.
But I'm willing to listen to people who say keep it stable.
Weaken to what level? The naira is around 360, 350, 358 to 361 right now. Weaken to what level?
I want to make it very difficult for the middle class people to be buying foreign goods. I want to make it difficult for people to fly their children in business class every vacation from London to come home.
So are you saying those are that's the category of people it will only affect?
I think the people who are benefiting from a strong naira are the middle class, and they're benefiting disproportionately at the expense of the poor class.
Don't you think it would also give rise to inflation? Just like we saw earlier that the naira traded around 500, 550 And inflation
Yes.
skyrocketed. Everything, even the corn seller on the street was like, her corn has increased because its dollar don't high.
Well, look at what happens. If you make it impossible for people to buy suits of $2,000 from London, which is what many of the elite do, and they have to buy suits made in Nigerian clothes, it's good. If the price of the corn goes up, what does it do? It makes people in the farm grow more corn. Ultimately, as they grow more corn and they sell more corn, which is our local product, the price will ultimately come down. In economics, it's called a one-time effect. When you devalue your currency, you have a one-time inflationary effect. We agree. But let us stop wasting our money on foreign goods, because ultimately, it's not sustainable. And now, there was a time when the planes to London were half empty. Now they're full again, because you have appreciated your currency so that the Naira has become stronger over the last 2 years by close to 25%.
So that means you're not satisfied with the level of the Naira right now, 360 something, 358 to 361.
It is unsustainable, and I'll say it here. At some point in the next 2 or 3 years, it will have another steep drop, and nothing can stop it.
How do you think that election season would affect the currency?
Election season generally leads to a lot of spending. And because there's a lot of spending, it tends to be inflationary. And because it tends to be inflationary, and people have a demand for dollars and there's uncertainty, it tends to push the dollar stronger versus the Naira. But it's temporary. The main force behind the Naira strength today is the central bank. Central bank maintains a high interest rate regime. They manage the Naira, so the Naira stays at the nominal level it's at. And I think in the long run, it's bad for us.
Now let's go to the cost of elections, because like I said earlier on, I'm just torn between this politics,
yes,
you know.
Yes.
The cost of elections in Nigeria, President Buhari sent a request to the National Assembly asking for over 240 billion naira. About 164 billion of that will be for election, environment, and all that, you know. What do you think? A lot of people have also come to say, no, President Buhari, this is the highest cost of election so far. INEC budget is in it. I think the Nigerian police about 11 billion, customs also, security defense and all of that. What do you think?
Those people are wrong.
Why?
In 2015, the budget for elections was 183 billion, roughly. And the Naira dollar was about 190. With the Naira dollar at 360, the new budget is almost the same as the budget in 2015 in terms of real money. If you take inflation and the currency adjustment, it's the same thing. So
it drops to the same nominal value.
It's the same value, because look, you can't, the things you are paying for in 2015 and you're paying for them in 2018, 19, the price has gone up. The Naira has lost its purchasing power. So when you are fair about it, the amount is reasonable. It's not, people just keep looking at the absolute amount, but it's reasonable. It's not a red flag. I think it's a reasonable amount.
Don't you think that the cost of having elections in Nigeria is quite expensive? I listened to the High Commissioner, the UK High Commissioner, and he did mention that Nigeria has a high cost of conducting elections. Are there other things we can do to reduce the cost of our elections? Even with the high cost, so to speak, we're still having some shenanigans, vote buying, and all of that.
I don't think that, let's not confuse what it costs INEC to conduct elections with what it costs political parties and candidates to run elections.
I'm not saying that.
Those are different.
Yes.
So let's look at INEC. INEC has to, most of the documents INEC produces, for example, sensitive election materials, are denominated in dollars. Okay? Much of the equipment is in dollars. The cars they buy, the equipment they use is in dollars. So you have to look at whether or not the Naira that we're spending today is enough for the elections. I don't think the cost of elections in Nigeria, as by the umpire, is unreasonable. I think I listened to the British High Commissioner Ambassador speak. He hedged. He said it appeared high to him, but he had to check. He was hedging somewhat. I think that on reflection, he realized that the number is reasonable. And I'm not a pro-Buhari person, but when they're being reasonable, we should tell them they're being reasonable.
Should we begin to check our campaign finance? Campaign finance.
Our campaign finance.
The other parts which
our campaign finance rules are ridiculous. First of all, it says you cannot donate more than $1 million to a presidential candidate. ₦1 million naira. It says that a presidential candidate should not spend more than ₦1 billion naira. This was written in 1999, I believe, or whenever it was written. They need to adjust it for reality in today's world.
Reality to what? To make it higher?
Inflation is going to be much higher. You can't run a presidential election with ₦1 billion naira. It's not possible.
Then the question will be, if our campaign finance is higher, there will be incentives for our politicians to go into office.
Yes.
Our money politics takes over and to recoup what they have spent. Because that's what we've been saying. At the end of the day, you see politicians like, no, make I enter there to get what I have spent. So isn't there a way for us to regulate campaign finance if we want to also see a party politics that is also based on ideology? Because these are all the things we also see in other...
I agree with you. It has to be reformed. But the direction of reform is not a 5-minute conversation. It's a big holistic reform. But I agree with you, there are some things wrong with it, and we should look at it. But we elected a man who was known for not caring about money, not caring about physical things, an ascetic man, a simple man.
Which is President Buhari.
Yes, that's who we elected. And
but money got him there.
But things have gotten much worse economically under him. And when the government tells you that the economy is coming out of recession is an automatic thing. Anybody who understands economic cycles knows that if you do nothing, the cycles will get you out of recession. But the problem is this.
But if you do things, it will get you out faster.
It will get you out faster and
better. If you don't do anything, you will enter depression.
But no, but you still come out of it. Even the depression in the US, they came out of it.
Yeah, but they did stuff. They didn't just, they weren't looking. Obama came in at the time of economic challenges. QE, a lot of things he did. The automakers were also incentivized and all of that. And the economy came out of a recession.
They did a New Deal. There's something, it was called
the New Deal, yes.
And the New Deal was a massive reflation of the US economy, which is what I've been calling for. We need a New Deal in Nigeria. We need somebody who says to the Nigerian people, this is where I'm taking you. These are the sacrifices you have to make. And I will make sacrifices with you. There's nothing wrong with the Nigerian president flying commercial in Nigeria. That will endear that person to the entire populace of Nigeria. If somebody entered an Arik Air tomorrow and ran into President Buhari coming to Lagos, sitting in front.
Nothing stops him from doing that.
Nothing stops him from doing that. And I can tell you, it's not a matter of security. Yeah. The people in that plane will feel they've been blessed. So there's simple things that leaders have to do to show their commitment to their people. And then people will go with them.
Like the Croatian president, we saw what she did during the World Cup, taking commercial flights. And
those are simple. And she paying for economic class tickets. Yeah. We can do that. We can find a leader who cares more about his people than about himself. And until we do that, we will not get out of this problem.
Let's go to another sensitive area which we've been very vocal,
yes,
especially on Twitter, the national carrier. On the national carrier, we know that the Minister of State for Aviation did launch the logo and all of that, because I don't even think they've launched the airline yet.
Yes.
Said by December 24, it will be ready. You had some strong views on social media. Do you still maintain those views? Because even the minister came out to clarify. He said, what Nigerians had said was $300 million for 5% stake, which he criticized, which I also did my research and found out that that was quite ridiculous, because I think America's Delta Airlines bought a stake in Richard Branson's Virgin,
yes,
for $360 million US for 49% stake.
Yes,
and
yes.
I'm wondering where the 5%, I think perhaps he was watching me that day, because in fact it was that day that he came out to say, no, it's not. He gave us a breakdown, financial model of how the $300 million will be shared for 3 years.
Yes.
What do you think of the national carrier?
I think the minister, Hadi Sirika, who is a friend of mine, I think he means well. I will say that to Nigerians, he means well. Well, I think he was hasty. I think he was hasty in the whole project, and I think he was badly advised. First of all, what I said in my Twitter was, I asked a question. I did not express any views. I just said, Richard, this thing was, Virgin is valued at $800 million. Why are we paying $300 million? And this is what he said. came from him.
Yeah.
It didn't come from. I asked for a clarification. Now the clarification he has given, that is a grant of 55 million in the first year, and then additional financing, which he doesn't define whether it's a grant or a loan in the next year, and additional financing in the third year. He also doesn't define whether it's a grant or a loan. So the question remains, why a grant? A grant is a gift. Why would you grant a private airline 55 million even in the first year? Why isn't it a loan that can be paid back to the government when the new people come in? I understand a loan to a startup. And then the other two tranches, it doesn't explain whether it's a grant or a loan, so it's opaque. Number two, if that's what you're going to do, how are you going to do an IPO, which he claims he's going to do an IPO in the first year? From what I know, you can't do an IPO unless you have, I think it's 5 years of financials.
Yes, and you have a lot of things to show. Yeah.
So how he's going to do an IPO in the first year, I don't understand. So I need clarification on that. And number three, if it's a government-owned enterprise, 100% government-owned enterprise, then what is ICRC doing with it? It should be a matter, when the divestment occurs, it should be a matter for the BPE. So I think it was hasty. And I think these are things that needs to be sorted out. And all I'm doing is asking questions. But I think he means well. But I think he should slow down and get his ducks in a line.
Which side of the divide do you belong to? Do you think Nigeria needs a national carrier? Because some people have said it's a waste of time. Don't bother. Get all the private airlines that are working right now, merge them or whatever. We don't need a national carrier. Where do you stand? Do we need it, yes or no?
My opinion is that we do not need a national carrier. I do not support a national carrier, but I believe the minister means well, and he may have superior knowledge, information than I do. But I, from where I'm sitting, I'm against a national carrier.
Don't you also think that those that say that we need a national carrier have an argument there, in the sense that Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa? We have a lot of travelers that go abroad. A lot of those foreign airlines also make money here and all of that. Don't you think because of that we also need a national carrier if it is done well? Just like other countries do have national carriers also, but also done with different models, I understand. But don't you think we need a national carrier with those that have that argument?
We need other things more. We do not have enough money. We do not have enough capital. And that should not be our priority. That's my view. The people that say that we did, like all the arguments you just made, they're reasonable arguments. But I don't agree with those arguments. That doesn't mean they're not reasonable. But for me, if I would listen 10 things to do with $55 million in Nigeria today, a national carrier wouldn't be in the top 10.
What would be number one? Your one. Yes, your top 10. What would be number one?
The most important thing we must do is to create employment in Nigeria.
How will that employment come?
If you're giving grants to companies to employ lots of people, that may help. An airline is not going to employ lots of people. So I would focus on infrastructure and on employment, and it'll be a long way before I think of national carrier. You're buying foreign planes, you're leasing foreign planes, it doesn't add one bit to the infrastructure or the employment of Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned. You're just employing people in Boeing to build planes for you. So that's not in my top 10. If you ask me for a list of my top 10, next time I see you, I'll give my top 10.
No, I know you won't give it to me readily now, but I just had to ask for top.
I understand. That's your job
for number one.
To put me on the spot.
Now, President Buhari has been there now for 3 years and some months. He's getting ready to round off his first term, because he's also made known that he wants to be president again.
Yes.
Talk to me about President Buhari's 3 years in office. As you know, as an economic person, as someone also that has been in government before and all of that, analyze for me how President Buhari's 3 years has been.
I think that everybody, even his supporters, will agree that his first 3 years, in terms of tangible, the things that matter to Nigerians have been terrible. They will agree. Where they will disagree.
His supporters will not agree.
No, they will agree. But here's what they will disagree. They will disagree and say, this is the reason why. PDP was awful. Jonathan was terrible. The oil price went down. They will give you all sorts of reasons why the 3 years have been terrible. But the 3 years have been terrible objectively. We've lost a lot of jobs. Our currency has devalued by 100%. Many things are wrong. There's killings everywhere. There's security everywhere. They will tell you, but they will blame it on somebody else. So that's the only difference. I think any reasonable person will tell you things are harder. Businesses are suffering. People are struggling. Food is more expensive. There's less security. There's less happiness. Inflation is high. There's nothing that's objectively better. But so I say what they will tell you is that, well, this was because Jonathan gave us such a bad hand that in spite of the bad hand, we have tried. It could have been worse if we didn't come in. That's the argument they make. And those arguments are unprovable because you don't know how things would have been with somebody else. But that's what they say. But here's what I'm looking for in 2019. The next president must do three things. He must unite a badly divided country. It's badly divided. He must fix an economy that's broken. The economy is broken. The fact that we're growing at 2% is not good enough. When our population growth is 3.5, and we have a lag. We should be aiming at double-digit growth for the next 15 years. That would be the only way we can get out of this mess. So the economy is broken. And the third thing the next person should do is to build a bridge for the next generation of leaders. This generation, which I'm part of, we've seen we're at the end of it. We now need to bring the younger people. Look, all these young people that want to run for election, they're not ready. If you don't come from the U.S. and want to be president of Nigeria, you can't even tell me what the Bureau of Public Procurement rules are. So you need to come here, be groomed, learn how things work in Nigeria, and then prepare yourself for higher leadership. The next leader should do that. The next leader should hire a lot of people, young people as ministers, and watch them and guide them. So if anybody convinces me they can do this, I will support them. But in the field we have today, very few of them can convince us that they can do these three things. Three things. We don't want 10 things. Heal us, fix our economy, and train us for the future. That's all we're asking for them.
Okay, let's also talk about this very sensitive issue because it's also affecting the economy, however we look at it, which is the head spent farmers crisis.
Yes.
Which we've seen MBS release inflation numbers, 11.23% as of June. There's also a likelihood that down year end, there may also be inflationary pressures. Food inflation is also on the rise, yes, attributed to low agricultural output, especially from those areas that the crisis have been in the past few months. How do you think that should be handled? Because anytime we get to hear of killings, I'm so disturbed, sad, and worried that the presidency comes out with the same thing all the time. We regret the killings. Our hands are on deck. My security chiefs are cracking their brains. They are doing, and I'm worried about that because we've been hearing this. Millions of people are not satisfied. Thousands of people are dying every day. Well, how do you think we should address the security concerns? That's one. The other, the B part of it, is has President Buhari run out of clues in terms of addressing the security situation?
Let me say this, and I want to be fair. And I had this discussion, again, I'm not dropping it. I had this discussion with the former president, Goodluck Jonathan. There seems to be a very high level of reluctance for presidents to hold their ministers accountable for performance or non-performance. There were scandals that came up during the Goodluck administration. Stella Odua, for example, who is a sister of mine, and other things. There was the case of the Interior Ministry recruitment, where people died.
Yes, the immigration. And I've not even had the last.
I always wondered why the president wouldn't dismiss a minister who is not performing or who has run into a scandal, so that we have a sense of accountability. So what's happening is that the presidents do not execute policy. They're the leaders. They have people execute policies for them. When the people feel that no matter what they do, they will not be held accountable, they will not be fired. Look, Donald Trump came into the U.S. government, and in his first year, he had replaced half of the people he hired. We must have the ability to say to our ministers and to our civil servants and to our leaders, you're not performing, go, so that the people there feel they have to do something. On the security side, I'm going around the circle, at a minimum, even if it's just for people to feel good, you get rid of some of the leaders and bring new people in. Maybe they have new ideas, maybe there's a new blood. You have in football, which Nigerians love, you had a coach, one of the better coaches in many, many years, Jose Mourinho in Chelsea. He was fired because somehow he didn't do well in 1 year. And he went to a better club, Manchester United, arguably. So my point is...
Yes, arguably.
But so the point is, if you remove the IG of police, that doesn't mean the end of his life. You can remove IG of police and put him somewhere else. But we need to show that we, the people that serve us are accountable to us, and they do not become institutions of their own. Okay? So if the Senate, rightly or wrongly, insists that Magu should not be confirmed, rightly or wrongly, I'm not on any side on this matter, the president should say, I don't agree with you, Senate, but I will obey the law, and I'll bring somebody else. Magu is I think he's a commissioner of police now, or deputy commissioner of police. He can be promoted as commissioner of police and put somewhere else. He can be used somewhere else. So I think that all of these issues where we do not hold people accountable, people feel they can do things and not be sacked or removed or censured, I think that's what's causing the lack of performance in our security, in our economy, and in very, very many areas of our society.
Now, I have two questions before we end this interview. The first part of it is the Farc allocations. We've seen states, they come to Abuja every month, try to get money and all of that. And at the MPC that was concluded on Tuesday, there was a salient point that was made there, that we should try to build fiscal buffers. Are you seeing that there's a time also whereby we would finish spending the monies, consume right now when all prices are higher, between $73 to $75 right now, that when we fall into a trap again, Yoruba people will say, Ajebese, as it were, you know,
yes.
We fall into another trap. Are you seeing that we're consuming and spending and eating everything we have right now?
I have always been against the so-called fiscal buffers. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because as a nation, what is savings for a nation is not the same thing as savings for a family. If your children are starving, you don't save money for their education. You feed them.
You feed them first.
First. So when you say we get into these problems, we need to avoid getting into these problems. And you know how we avoid getting into problems in the first place? We diversify our economy in a serious manner. We industrialize. We build roads, bridges, and trains. We do things that make us productive as a nation, so we don't end up in a problem. Here's what happens with this fiscal buffer, which is what I don't like. You put money in a bank. Let's say you put it in abroad. You're earning 1% of the money. And then this thing happens, this bad thing happens. What do you think happens to that money? They spend it on salaries. So you never build your bridges. I say when we have money
but
now...
it will be a stop-gap mechanism, like what happened during the Okonjo-Iweala days or the Obasanjo days.
For what?
We still had buffers. Does it mean that everything... Yes.
Did we build anything with it?
No, we spent it when we also needed to spend it.
But haven't spent
because it would have been worse if we did not have to spend.
No, it would have been better if we had used it to industrialize our country. What we should be doing is borrowing money to industrialize our country so that we are self-sufficient, so that those cycles don't happen again. But if those cycles happen, the person in power will take the money and he will pay salaries.
But aren't you also worried that the monies for salaries are not also being paid because a lot of workers are being owed across the states? Kemi Adeosun's finance ministry came up with a fiscal sustainability plan some months ago, gave us like 22, 23 conditions which the states will meet. They gave them budgetary support, as it were. But we're seeing that most of the states are not, they are still owing. In Ekiti, a lot of people did say that the person that lost, the deputy governor, why? Because he was part of the government. Fayashe was not paying salaries. You go across to many states. States are not paying salaries. States are not paying pensions. So where are all the money is going to?
Well, that's a different matter. But you're talking about policy. And policy should be that we should use all available funds to develop our country and industrialize our country. That's the answer. Now, when you've done that, you find that people are going to depend less on the government for their salaries, for one. Two, we'll have fewer cycles of boom and bust. because we depend on the price of oil, which is beyond our control. Let us do things that... Look, the best infrastructure in Nigeria today is still the Third Mainland Bridge in Lagos. Third Mainland Bridge in Lagos was responsible for the development of Ikoyi, Lekki, and Victoria Island. If we have stuff like that, Nigeria will not need for government to be responsible for 80% of the salaries of people. The private sector will do that. Let us industrialize. Let us take the burden of the federal government. Putting money in the bank at 1% abroad makes you feel good for a little while, but in the end, you will spend it unproductively again.
Okay. I must end this interview now because with what you're saying, it's putting me into different areas which I need to get your view. But I'm being forced to end this interview with this last question.
Yes.
Going back to politics, looking at the political scene right now, who do you think is best suited? You gave me your criteria that you need someone to heal us, you need someone to fix the economy, and you gave three.
To build a bridge for,
to build a bridge,
for the new generation, yes.
To that we are so much a divided country and all of that.
Yes.
Looking at the political scene now, who do you think is best suited for the president in 2019? Some people may not like this question, but I just need to ask it. Looking at the political scene now, is there a clear view who can be president in 2019? Who do you think is best suited? I think that's the word. Or is it a premature question?
It may be premature, but I have a clear view who is best prepared.
I don't think
today.
It's a premature question, though.
Who is best prepared today? And people are going to say all sorts of things. But who is best prepared today is either the current president and he changes his complete way of governing, or Atiku Abubakar. Now, people are going to tell you, oh, once youth, they're old and all that. No, we still need to build a bridge to the future. You don't go from one side of the river to the other without building the bridge.
Some people will also disagree with you. Vice President Atiku, he was there during the Obasanjo days.
Yes.
So what new things is he going to be bringing on board?
Those Obasanjo days you mentioned may have been the best years of Nigeria economically. Those 8 years were the best years. We made many institutions that are helping us today, paying down the debt. Many people that were developed in those 8 years, many intelligent people have done in those years. Those may have been the best 8 years of Nigerian democracy since 1999. So let's not throw away those 8 years of Obasanjo so casually.
I think we will leave it at that now. Let me just hold my fire now till next we'll see again. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.